Now that we know about the light meter and the exposure triangle, I'm going to talk to you about how to use ISO, aperture and shutter speed creatively to make the pictures that you want to make. Firstly, ISO. ISO is your tool for collecting light. You're going to tell your digital sensor how sensitive you want it to be to the light that's coming into the camera. If you turn up the ISO, you're making the sensor more sensitive and it will collect the light more quickly. As you turn it down, it will collect whatever light's coming in much more slowly. There's going to be an aesthetic result from turning your ISO up or down. The higher you turn it up, the more you're going to introduce what's called noise into the camera. That's because as you turn up the ISO, you're going to be asking it to work harder, and you're going to start to get what's called electrical interference, noise, and it's going to make your picture appear much more speckly. That electrical interference doesn't have to be a bad thing. You might actually want noise in your picture, so as a creative tool, you have the choice. The shutter in your camera is your tool for controlling time and motion in your photographs. The world is moving and you might want to freeze it or you might want to blur it. As you work with your shutter speeds, you should probably get a range of somewhere around 1/8,000th of a second all the way to 30 seconds, and then what's called bulb. As you make shutter speeds that are faster than around 1/60th of a second, you'll find yourself freezing movement. If you make shutter speeds that are longer than 1/60th of a second, you'll find yourself blurring whatever movement is in front of you. A very important thing to remember is that as you slow down your shutter speed and it becomes longer and longer, you're going to start to get what's called camera shake. And camera shake is, at the very least, the fact that your heart is beating and you've got vibration coming down through your arm and into the camera. The final element is aperture. And this is your primary tool for controlling depth of field in a picture. Depth of field refers to the zone of sharpness in a photograph in front and behind the point of focus in your picture. And as your aperture goes wider and wider, the actual number becomes smaller. So in some ways it's not as intuitive as ISO or shutter speed. It's important to remember that the wider the aperture you use, the shallower the depth of field in your picture. And that means the smaller the number, the shallower the depth of field. Depth of field is a great tool for directing the viewer through the photograph and letting them know exactly where to look in the photograph. Now that you have the tools you need to make a creative photograph, just get out there and have some fun.